Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giradhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanatari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giradhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Alrighty. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Shata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Discount founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Shata Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaurish Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchinandana Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Sri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunatha Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Sav Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Hadras Thakur Ki Jai. Pratim Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Pranath Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Ishkan Vartma Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gora Premanande, Haribo. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayana Namaskritya
Narayana Namaskritya.
Naram Jaiva Narottamam
Naram Jaiva Narottamam.
Devam Saraswatam Vyasam
Devyam Saraswatim
Ito
Vyasam.
Jayam Niridayat
Drojayam Hiraya.
Nasta Preshu Apatreshu
Nasta Preshu Abadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhagavate Uttama
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Shloke.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. All right. Welcome, everybody. Today is Sunday, July 28th, 2024, and we will be reading Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 23, Maharaj Prithu Going Back Home, and verse 36. Vijaya Bhimukho Raja
Vijaya Bhimukho Raja.
Shrut Vaitara Vyatiyam Alim Tasmai Harantyagre Rajana Prataveyata Vijaya Bhimukho Raja Shrut Vaitara Vyatiyam Balim Tasmi Harantyagre Rajana Pritaveyata Vijaya Bhimukho Raja Shrut Vaitara Vyatiyam Balim Tasmai Harantyagre Rajana Pritaveyata. Okay, please repeat.
Vijaya Bhimukho Raja.
Vijaya Bhimukho Raja
Shrut Vaitara Vyatiyam.
Shrut Vaitara Vyatiyam Balim Tasmai Harantyagre Rajana Pritaveyata Vijaya Bhimukho Raja Shrut Vaitara Vyatiyam Balim Tasmai Harantyagre Rajana Pritaveyata. Anyone else?
Vijaya Bhimukho Raja.
Vijaya Bhimukho Raja
Shrutvatara Vyatiyam.
Shrut Vaitara Vyatiyam
Balim Tasmai Harantyagre.
Balim Tasmai Harantyagre
Rajana Pritaveyata.
Rajana Pritaveyata Vijaya Bhimukho Raja Shrut Vaitara Vyatiyam Balim Tasmai Harantyagre Rajana Pritaveyata. Anyone else? All right, we'll do word for word. Vijaya Vimukta,
Vijaya,
one who is about to start for victory.
one who is about to start for victory.
Raja,
Raja,
king.
king.
Shrutva,
Shruva,
hearing.
hearing.
Etat,
Veda,
this.
this.
Abhiyati,
Ayati,
starts.
starts.
Yan,
Yan,
on the chariot.
on the chariot.
Alim,
Valim,
taxes.
taxes.
Tasmai,
Tasmai,
unto him.
unto him.
Haranti,
Haranti,
present.
present.
Agre,
Agre,
before.
before.
Rajanaha,
Rajanaha,
other kings.
other kings.
Pritave,
Prithave,
unto King Prithu.
unto King.
Yata,
Yata,
as it was done.
as it was done.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. If a king who is desirous of attaining victory and ruling power chants the narration of Prithu Maharaj 3 times before going forth on his chariot, all subordinate kings will automatically render all kinds of taxes unto him, as they rendered them unto Maharaj Prithu, simply upon his order. Okay, please repeat. If a king
If a king
who is desirous of attaining victory and ruling power
who desires to attain victory and ruling power
chants the narration of Prithu Maharaj
chants the narration of Prithu Maharaj
3 times
3 times
before going forth on his chariot,
before going forth on his chariot,
all subordinate kings
also appointed kings
will automatically render all kinds of taxes unto him,
will automatically render all kinds of taxes unto him,
as they rendered them unto Maharaj Prithu,
as they rendered them unto Maharaj
simply upon his order.
simply upon his order.
Purport. Since a Kshatriya king naturally desires to rule the world, he wishes to make all other kings subordinate to him. This was also the position many years ago when Prithu Maharaj was ruling over the earth. At that time, he was the only emperor on this planet. Even 5,000 years ago, Maharaj Yudhisthira and Maharaj Pariksit were the sole emperors of this planet. Sometimes the subordinate kings rebelled, and it was necessary for the emperor to go and chastise them. This process of chanting the narrations of the life and character of Prithu Maharaj is recommended for conquering kings if they want to fulfill their desire to rule the world. Om Jnanatamrandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chaksharam Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Padati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagvatatam Samadhanatan Tam Sajivam Savadetam Savatutam Parajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Samadhana Lalita Shri Vishakam Pitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagapate Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Rangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hri Priye Panchakopa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Hare. If they heard this and they read this narration of Prithu Maharaj 3 times before going forth on their chariot, or perhaps their Lincoln town car or something, then all subordinate kings would automatically give them taxes. And I think that's something our current rulers would be very pleased to happen. So what is the role of the ruler? So we've talked about this extensively since we've been talking about Prithu Maharaj. I mean, we've talked about this probably more than anything since we started the pastimes of Prithu Maharaj. What is the role of a ruler? Who knows? Anybody?
Maintain people's God consciousness.
Yeah, to maintain the people's God consciousness. Anybody else? No? Okay. Yeah. So The supreme duty, this is from the Bhagavatam, the supreme duty of the ruling king is to give all protection to law-abiding persons and to chastise those who stray from the ordinances of scripture in ordinary times when there is no emergency. So is that what our current rulers do? No, they're not doing that at all. So we know the Bhagavad Gita tells us that whatever actions a great man does, the common man will follow. And so when our current leaders, our so-called great men, are spending their time just gratifying their senses and trying to get whatever kickbacks, whatever money they can squeeze out of the budget and from so-called subordinate kings, right? They're just taking that money and using it for their own sense gratification. They're not giving it back to the people. At least not the majority of them. I'm sure there might be like a handful maybe that are actually doing their job properly. But I do remember Barack Obama had said that in the run-up to him being the Democratic nominee before he was elected, he said what it took for him to get to that point should have precluded him from ever being eligible to be a politician, because there's so much backhanded dealing and nefarious stuff going on in politics. Yeah, not enough time in the world for all these backhanded dealings. So perhaps our current politicians should hear. Yes, I saw that. Perhaps our politicians should hear this story of Maharaj Prithu, because they just hear it 3 times, then they're going to get all these taxes from their subordinate kings. But the problem is, it's not just hearing. They have to actually understand the story. So if they could see the story and understand what it means to be a ruler, then they might be able to take on some of those qualities themselves. So part of hearing is so important, because hearing about Krishna and his devotees, or hearing about Krishna's devotees, is the same as hearing about Krishna. So in the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada says in this purport, Srimad Bhagavatam means everything in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When we hear the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Lord, or hear about the character, reputation, and activities of his devotees, they are all one and the same. Neophyte devotees simply try to understand the pastimes of the Lord and are not very interested in hearing about the activities of his devotees. But such discrimination should not be indulged in by any real devotee. So we heard there from Srila Prabhupada him saying that hearing about that Krishna's devotees, like Prithu Maharaj, is the same as hearing about Lord Krishna. And so one of the things we know about devotional service is that hearing is actually one of the most important parts of devotional service. So the Bhagavatam also says, hearing of the holy name of the Lord is the beginning of devotional service. Although any one of the 9 processes is sufficient in chronological order, the hearing of the holy name of the Lord is the beginning. Indeed, it is essential. Elsewhere in the Bhagavatam, it says, those who are desirous of achieving complete perfection in life must submissively hear all topics that are connected with the transcendental activities and qualities of the personality of Godhead, who acts wonderfully. And the little short purport from that verse says, the systematic hearing of transcendental activities, qualities, and names of Lord Sri Krishna pushes one towards eternal life. Systematic hearing means knowing him gradually in truth and fact. And this knowing him in truth and fact means attaining eternal life, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Such transcendental glorified activities of Lord Sri Krishna are the prescribed remedy for counteracting the process of birth, death, old age, and disease, which are considered to be material awards for the conditioned living being. The culmination of such a perfectional stage of life is the goal of human life and the attainment of transcendental bliss. So hearing is really important. It's the goal of human life, and that our ability to attain transcendental bliss is within that. So Lord Brahma also says, O my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing, and thus their hearts become cleansed. And you take your seat there. You are so merciful, your devotees to your devotees that you manifest yourself in the particular eternal form of transcendence in which they always think of you. And then lastly on this topic, simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. So hearing is so important. One thing that's kind of a no-brainer is how can you serve somebody if you don't know anything about them, right? It's pretty hard. I mean, you have to know a little bit about someone before you serve them, even if it's just like, oh, I know that I have this new teacher in school. I better behave, I better do my schoolwork. You don't know much about them, but you know that they're an authority over your grades in English class or whatever, right? And so you need to know at least a little bit before you start to serve somebody. And how do you develop love for somebody? Well, you have to know them. You can't just, I meet somebody off the street and I say, oh, I love you. I mean, they're gonna probably laugh in my face and think that I'm being disingenuous, because how could I possibly love them? I don't know them at all, right? And so how do we get to serve people and to love them? Is we get to know them. And getting to know Krishna means we got to hear about him. We have to hear about him, right? Okay, so what is devotional service? Who knows? Who can give a guess of what devotional service is? No, how about you? Since you're trying to pawn it off on Kirtaneshwar, you tell me.
Doing selfless things just to please the Lord and other glories.
Yeah, very good. That's good. Yeah. See, you didn't need to have him answer for you. What's that?
I don't know what devotion is.
Yeah. Well, when I was getting ready for this class, I said, I don't know what I'm going to talk. I was talking to Kirtaneshwar Prabhu. I said, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, because most of us aren't kings and we're not really concerned with, collecting taxes. And and he said, as he always says, just talk about devotional service. So yeah, devotional service means activities performed for the pleasure of Lord Krishna with devotion, and ultimately not mixed with any desire for personal pleasure. So that can be really difficult at first. I mean, we all have desires. And so most of us come with kind of a mixed idea. The service that we're performing isn't quite pure devotional service. It's mixed because usually we have some other desire in there. But that's okay. Just keep doing it. We'll gradually come to the platform of pure devotional service. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says, without devotional service, all other methods for spiritual self-realization are weak and insignificant. Unless one comes to the devotional service of Lord Krishna, jnana and yoga cannot give the desired results. So we can try to sit and speculate, or we could try to gather all the knowledge we can. And I'm sure some of us have met people like this, where they have a lot of knowledge about the scriptures, a lot of knowledge about Krishna, but they haven't really moved that knowledge from here down to here, and they're not able to take that knowledge and start performing devotional service, then they're kind of missing the whole point, right? The Bhagavatam says the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service under the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated, uninterrupted, to completely satisfy the self. So unmotivated and uninterrupted, so that means sort of just you're doing service all the time. So I remember when I was growing up, I grew up Christian, and I remember my family and also just people in the community in general, like they would see somebody who was really, really involved in Christianity, and they would call him like a Jesus freak. Has anybody heard that? Right, they would call him a Jesus freak. And it was said with some disdain. It wasn't said, like glorifying that person. It was like, oh, stay away from them. They're a Jesus freak. What'd you say? Yeah, Jesus freaks out in the street. Yeah. So now we're Krishna freaks out in the street. But but I remember hearing that growing up, and always being sort of confused by this, because my family and the members of my community, they said, oh yeah, they believed in God, they believed in Jesus, they loved God, they loved Jesus. Meanwhile, they were putting someone down for their overt devotion, and so I was always completely confused by that. I thought, well, if what you're saying is true and you believe that this person is God, shouldn't you be a freak about them? I mean, isn't that what you should be doing? Is freaking out? And so it was just always very confusing to me that people would put down others for their devotion. Because if you truly do understand your constitutional position as part and parcel of Krishna and as a servant of the Lord, then yeah, you should be freaking out. You should be freaking out. So yeah, okay, that was my little Jesus freak soapbox. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, so that's why our service should be unmotivated. It should be uninterrupted. We should be doing it all the time. Now that doesn't mean that you have to give up, run away from your family and not take care of them and just devote everything to Krishna. No, because what you can do is bring your family to Krishna consciousness and raise your children to be Krishna conscious and tell them about Krishna so that they can also serve Krishna. And of course, if you have to support your family, it means you have to have a job and saying, oh, just get rid of everything. Just get rid of everything and serve Krishna, because you're able to serve Krishna with everything that you have. With whatever you currently have, you can use it in some way to serve Krishna. Whether it be, your new sports car or your, yes, I know you have a new sports car, or your old beat up jalopy. You can use those both in Krishna consciousness. You can, drive yourself to the temple. You can maybe dress the deities, or you could take the devotees places. You can take places. I mean, so many different things you can do with whatever you have. And that's just using a car as an example. Okay. So the Bhagavad Gita says, a person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing these devotional services, he attains all these, and at the end he reaches the supreme eternal abode. So by performing devotional service, you get all the results of all those things: austerities, giving charity, pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities, studying the Vedas. So by doing devotional service, you get all of those results, but from just serving Krishna. So the Bhagavatam also says, devotees solely engaged in devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, never fear any condition of life. For them, heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. So I know I'm not quite there yet. I get upset if my room is too hot or too cold or something, right? But hopefully, and if I keep doing devotional service, I'll get to that point where I can be in the most hellish, abominable conditions, but still just be happy to be serving the Lord. And so that's, for a devotee, being in the hellish planets or being in heaven, it doesn't matter. As long as there's service to the Lord, they're satisfied. And so what about once we've attained liberation? What happens then? Does anybody know? Are we still doing devotional service once we attain liberation? You guys are shaking your head. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So this is part of a purport from the Bhagavad Gita. It is said here that this devotional service is eternally existing. It is not as the Mayavadi philosophers claim. Although they sometimes take to so-called devotional service, their idea is that as long as they are not liberated, they will continue their devotional service. But at the end, when they become liberated, they will become one with God. Such temporary time-serving devotional service is not accepted as pure devotional service. Actual devotional service continues even after liberation. When the devotee goes to the spiritual planet in the kingdom of God, he is also engaged there in serving the Supreme Lord. He does not try to become one with the Supreme Lord. So we're going to still be doing devotional service even when we're liberated. And my dear spiritual master, Jivananda Prabhu, he always talks about asking people, what are you going to do when you go to heaven and you meet God? What are you and God going to do? And most people just kind of seem dumbfounded because they never thought about it before. But yeah, this is we're going to have an actual relationship with God. We're going to do things together. We're going to do service. One man told him that he was going to eat a steak dinner with him, and so was that someone told you that he's going to eat a steak dinner with God? Yeah, I don't know if that's quite what's going to happen. So all right. So let's talk a little bit about what are some characteristics of pure devotional service. Does anybody know one of them? There's 6. Yeah, tell them what that is.
All miseries are destroyed.
That's right. Yeah, you're gonna be free from distress, right? Yeah, beginning of all auspiciousness. Very good. And anyone else we got? A few more.
Derives the happiness of liberation.
The what?
The happiness of liberation.
Yeah, the happiness of liberation.
Derives liberation.
Oh, derides it. Yeah. I was going to say, you said that if they find the happiness in liberation, it's like, no, they kind of eschew that. Yeah, so there's the devotee that's doing pure devotional service. Even the idea of liberation is kind of just like, no, I don't need it, right? Okay, and then we have 2 more, I think.
Very rarely achieved.
Yeah.
Imbues one with the highest transcendental pleasure.
Yeah, and then there's one last one.
Control.
Yeah, okay. Right, so immediate relief from distress puts one in transcendental pleasure. It's rarely achieved. And you don't even desire liberation anymore. And it's the only way to attract Krishna. So Krishna is all attractive, but pure devotional service attracts even him. This means that pure devotional service is even transcendentally stronger than Krishna himself, because it is Krishna's internal potency. Wow. So you know that old conundrum people say, is Krishna, if Krishna is so all-powerful, can he make a rock so strong, so big he can't lift it, so heavy that he can't lift it? Yes. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, in theory, you could just keep going on and on making heavier and heavier rocks, and then, oh, can't lift it. Okay, lifted it. Yeah. And so devotional service is even stronger than Krishna himself because it's his internal potency. So that's from the nectar of devotion. So, okay, now that we've heard all these wonderful things about devotional service and why we should do it, I'm going to change gears a little bit, and we're going to talk more about the kings. Let's see, what did the verse said? That all subordinate kings will automatically render all kinds of taxes unto him. So that's something that kings want. And then the end of the purport says, this process of chanting the narrations of life and character of Prithvi Maharaj is recommended for conquering kings if they want to fulfill their desire to rule the world. So now we're going to hear about a king that tried his best to conquer, and he just wasn't able to. because maybe he didn't hear much about Prithvi Maharaj, I don't know. So we're going to talk about Jarasandha, and Krishna. So Jarasandha, he was a king, and in Magda, and Magadha. He was a king of Magadha, and yeah, we're gonna get there. So he was a king, the king of Magadha, and he also was related by marriage to King Kamsa. And so he was very upset when Krishna and Balaram killed King Kamsa, because this meant that his daughters were now widows, because his daughters were married to King Kamsa. So because of that, he decided he wanted to kill all the Yadus, which is the family of Krishna. So he attacks Mathura with a really huge, great army. So I wanted to just read a couple of little bit descriptions of his attack that were from the Krishna Bhagavatam. Really great. I was reading this last night. So first, he sees Krishna and Balaram, and he's kind of talking smack to them, and egging them on, saying about how he wants to fight them. And I just loved Krishna's response to him. So after hearing Jarasandha speak in that way, Krishna answered, "My dear king Jarasandha, heroes do not talk so much. Rather, they show their prowess. Because you are talking a great deal, it appears that you are assured of your death in this battle. We do not care to hear you any longer, for it is useless to hear the words of a person who is going to die or of one who is very distressed." And so that just cracked me up when I was reading it. So I love that. Okay, so let's move on to a description of the actual battle. So this is Krishna fighting. So it says, "He, Krishna, took his arrows from their quiver, and one after another he set them on the bowstring and shot them toward the enemy. They were so accurate that the elephants, horses, and infantry soldiers of Jarasandha were quickly killed. The incessant arrows shot by Krishna appeared like a whirlwind of blazing fire, killing all military strength of Jarasandha. And as Krishna released his arrows, all the elephants gradually began to fall, their heads severed by the arrows. Similarly, all horses fell, their necks severed, and the chariots fell also, along with their flags and the fighters and drivers on the chariots. Almost all the infantry soldiers fell in the field of battle, their heads, hands, and legs cut off. In this way, many thousands of elephants, horses, and men were killed, and their blood flowed just like the waves of a river. In that river, the severed arms of men appeared like snakes, and their heads like tortoises. The dead bodies of the elephants appeared like small islands, and the dead horses appeared like sharks. By the arrangement of the supreme will, there was a great river of blood filled with paraphernalia. The hands and legs of the infantry soldiers floated just like different kinds of fish. The hair of the soldiers floated like seaweed and moss, and the floating bows of the soldiers resembled waves of the river. And all the jewelry from the bodies of the soldiers and commanders seemed like many pebbles flowing down the river of blood." So I know that's pretty gruesome, but I don't know, maybe I liked that description of gruesome warfare. So it was a pretty gruesome battle. And to top it off, Krishna and Balaram fought that battle with smaller amount of men, smaller army than Jarasandha had. So after he lost, Jarasandha, Balaram arrests Jarasandha, and Krishna tells him, no, don't arrest him. Just let him go. So they release him. So Jarasandha, he's ashamed at his defeat, and he's just going to go. He wants to go meditate and do severe austerities and penances. But on his way home, they call him the princely order, his other royal friends are telling him, they're convincing him, like, no, just build up your strength and fight again. Like, don't give up your position as king. It was just bad luck. So what did he do? He came back. He came back, and the same thing ensued. But he didn't just come back one time. No, he came back 17 times, and each time the same thing happened. And so now the 18th time he decided to attack. Decided to attack at the same time that another king, Kalayavana, was also going to attack Mathura. So Kalayavana, he had a boon that he couldn't be defeated on the battlefield. And so when he went to attack Krishna, he knew about this boon. And so he kind of lured him into this cave. And inside the cave, there was a man sleeping in there. And Krishna put his chadar on the man that was sleeping in there, and he hid. And so Kalayavana comes into the cave, and he sees this guy sleeping there with Krishna's chadar on, out of fighting him, because at that time the rules of warfare prohibited one attacking a sleeping enemy. You couldn't attack them when they were sleeping. So he runs over there and he kicks this guy that he thinks is Krishna. Well, this sleeping man was not Krishna. This was Muchukunda, and he had a boon that whoever disturbed his sleep would be burned to ashes with a glance. Now, how many of you might want to have that boon sometimes? Yeah. Yeah. If I had that boon, you would be dead. Anyway. Yeah, so he had this boon that whoever disturbed his sleep, he would just be able to burn them to ashes with just a glance. So that's what happened. Kalayavana, he's now dead. So there's more to that story, but we don't have time to get into it. But so then Krishna, he went back to Mathura to fight the rest of Kalayavana's soldiers. Meanwhile, Jarasandha, he attacked for the 18th time. And Krishna, not wanting any more killing, he left the battlefield. And Jarasandha called him a coward and so many other names for leaving the battlefield. But Krishna had actually left to kidnap and marry Rukmini, which was at her request. So Krishna and Balaram, they left and they climbed to the top of this big mountain. And Jarasandha saw this and he set the mountain on fire and the whole mountain burned. And so he just assumed, okay, good, they're dead. He's satisfied they're dead. And so Jarasandha, he leaves and goes home. And but of course, Krishna and Balaram, they escaped. They jumped off the mountain. And then sometime later, Jarasandha, he was still causing problems. This, like Lavanga said, this time he was not accepting the sovereignty of King Yudhisthira. And so Krishna had a plan to conquer him for once and for all. So Krishna, Bhimasena, and Arjuna disguised themselves as brahmanas, and they went to Jarasandha for charity. And they asked that he give them whatever they asked for. And Jarasandha, he's like looking at these three, and he's looking at their bodies, and he's kind of telling, he can tell. He's like, these guys are not brahmanas. He's like, I kind of recognize them, but I can't really place them. But I know they're not brahmanas. You could tell they were Kshatriyas because there were different markings on their body, like a groove from where they carried their bow. Like you could see that, and some other things. But he decided, well, since they've already kind of debased themselves by begging as a Kshatriya, which was, very dishonorable for a Kshatriya to be begging, I'm just going to give them whatever they want. So Krishna then tells him, oh, actually, we're Kshatriyas. And Jarasandha is probably like, yeah, I know. And he said, and actually, we came to challenge you to a fight. And actually, I'm Krishna, and this is Arjuna and Bhimasena. And Jarasandha, he's very happy. He's like, yes, of course I want to fight you. You're my old enemy. But he says, I'm not going to fight Krishna because he's a coward. It's just, he ran away from the battlefield. I'm not going to fight him. And he says, oh, no, I'm not going to fight Arjuna. He's younger than me. He's not really an equal. But you know what? I'll fight Bhimasena because they were more equally matched. And so they fought. And they were very equally matched. So they fought. And it's really interesting. They would fight in the daytime, and then at night they would retire from fighting and live as friends. And then in the daytime, they would start fighting again. And so this went on for 28 whole days, and they couldn't defeat each other. And finally, Bhimasena says to Krishna, like, I can't defeat him. And Krishna, he knew a secret about him, about Jarasandha, about how he was born. So he was actually born in two halves from two different women. Half of him was born from one woman, half of him was born from another woman, and they were dead halves. And so they were discarded. The halves were discarded, like in the forest. And this witch came along and she found both halves, and she, using her powers, joined him together. And so he was half like down the middle. So Krishna, knowing this, he picks up like a stick and shows it to Bhimasena, and like pulls the stick in half lengthwise. And Bhimasena, knowing, understanding what this means, he grabbed one of his Jarasandha's legs and like kind of pushed the other one down and just like tore him in half. It was really gruesome, and yeah, very gruesome. Yeah, you should read it. And yeah, tears him in half. And so now he's dead. He's obviously dead. And then Krishna installed Jarasandha's son on his throne, on Jarasandha's former throne. And so that was the end. And so that, maybe if he had heard the story of Prithu Maharaj 3 times and had understood it, this would not have happened to him. All right. So with that, since hearing about Krishna and his devotees is so important, does anyone have like a favorite pastime, or do you have a question or a comment? Yeah.
Let's say that I was reading Krishna book, and I got that part. I was so happy. It's like the first battle with Jarasandha. So cool. I was just thinking.
Yeah.
Because Krishna's pastimes are so bright, and there's so many loving pastimes, and there's more pastimes. I was thinking, Krishna never ceases to amaze me. Every page of Krishna is like that. Krishna's the most amazing lover, the most amazing warrior, most amazing king, most amazing husband, most amazing friend, most amazing trickster.
Yeah. Yeah, when I read that pastime in the Krishna book, it was probably the only pastime where I actually gasped out loud when I read how he died. I was just like, oh, whoa. So, yeah, very nice. Anybody else have any favorite pastimes or comments or questions? All right, well, you have something?
There's so many going through my head right now. But I'm trying to think, okay, what pastime do I favorite? Srimad Krishna and his devotees. One of my favorite pastimes was Brother Krishna. I really love this pastimes. That was for different Vrindavan pastimes, but I really like Krishna's Dwarka pastimes as well. Because there's so much action in these pastimes.
Yeah.
And I also really appreciate how in the Bhagavatam, of course, Krishna goes to Hastinapur to basically get message for them and try to stop the battle for the city. And it's really sweet, he's basically taking this weird voluntary sport. Because they're taking this position, it's not like maybe just on the planet, but he's serving the planet. Because they're trying to do all the things right to avoid this battle. A lot of people think, oh, God, I'm going to do this or that, but they don't understand that the planet is actually doing everything possible to avoid this fight. And when they can't, when they're not being used to, Christians all going there. And it's really sweet how Krishna picks up that role. And even when he's there, he reveals his market minister to Grace Lalita and Dhritarashtra. They see it, but they think, oh, Krishna is just like a mystic baby. So there's also an important lesson in this too. It's like a lot of people say, if God exists, why won't he come down and show himself in front of you? But if he did, you couldn't believe it unless you have the eyes.
Right. Yeah, there is that song that came out in the early 2000s or late 90s. What if God was one of us, just a stranger on the bus? Yeah, I don't know, that popped in my head. All right, very nice. All right, I think we'll end there. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.